Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's me, Robert Phoenix, and it is another edition of the Friday Farcast. I am flying solo today. Well, not quite. Look who we have here. Yes, she is. We have a Peachy sighting. Peachy's decided to in for Jasper today, and Jasper is hanging out in the sunroom in his little crown throne. So Jasper's taking a Friday off, and we have a Peachy sighting. I don't know how long she's going to be here, but I'm sure she'll add to whatever kind of transmission that we're going to share together today. Anybody, welcome. We're in a weird place. We're in a very, very weird place. Things right now are right on the edge and can spiral completely out of control within 72 hours. And I'm not being hyperbolic. I did a show yesterday on 15 Minutes of Flame. And I am not a person that is in the rah-rah mode for a civil war. I'm just telling you that right now. Now, whether or not it is inevitable, or we get to some kind of the way this thing has been pieced together is that nobody can blink now. Well, the first group that blinks loses. That's always the outcome. But nobody can really back down now. The Biden administration cannot back down. They can't. If they back down, then they're admitting that their policy, which has been, listen, their policy has been an extension of the immigration policy in this country for decades. The only difference is that it metastasized. That's just in terms of access and numbers. It metastasized. So what they've been doing hasn't really changed all that much, with the exception of the laxity of security and border access. It's always been a little wobbly, right? It's always been a lot. I mean, really, ever since the two Bushes. The two Bushes were really instrumental in allowing migration to ramp up. So was LBJ, by the way. There are certain presidents along the path that basically make it easier for people to cross the border. And as a country, I'm gonna say some things that some people may not agree with, but as a country, I would say that we have benefited from people that have crossed that border. And it would be disingenuous for me or anyone else to deny that. Right? How many times have you gone out to a restaurant and had a really good meal? There's a really good chance that somebody from Mexico was in that kitchen cooking that food or doing the dishes. And my experience with, I used to do like landscape work and stuff like that long time ago. I like being on landscape crews. And my experience with workers from Mexico was that they busted their ass. They busted their ass. They worked their ass off. They were an important part of what we did. Even now, as I cruise down the highways in Texas during the summertime, where the heat is insane. we're talking 100-degree weather on a daily basis. And who do you see out on the roads? Fixing the roads? Guys from Mexico. And they're out there, keeping our highways up and running. So I'm not here to completely disparage a group of people who have come into this country and become part of our story and added to our story. And I think in most cases, a very positive way. That said, a lot of those people who have made that migratory journey and are here and are looking at what's coming are not down with it. They're not down with it. Most of the Hispanic people that I talk with in Texas are conservative to the core. They have very religious values, Catholic, obviously. It is a patriarchal culture. So the father, and again, nobody's perfect, right? Sometimes, there's stories about being overbearing and machismo and all that stuff, right? Whatever. Every culture has its shadow side or quirks or, nobody's fucking perfect. Okay. But that's a culture where the man in the family protects the family. It is usually, by the way, the breadwinner. So they have traditional values. And there's a guy down the road here, Texas, right? I'm in Texas. I live, in the hill country. And I just moved, and there's this guy down the road who worked on my car a couple of weeks ago. Mexican, Hispanic, right? He's running for mayor. Why is he running for mayor? Because the mayor here in Kerrville wants to defund the police. Yeah, fucking moron. He wants to defund the police. And then I found out that the place that I just moved to, before I moved here, had a series of break-ins one night, about 30 cars. They all got broken into all one night, right? So I don't know. If I had known that, would I have chosen this place? Maybe not. I don't know. It looks like it has the feel of a very quiet, rural kind of subdivision, semi-rural subdivision. It's quiet as hell here. Nobody bothers you, or at least since I'm here. So he was talking with me about it, and he says, "Oh yeah, it was." And I had, because I've got a brain that clicks, right? Takes data and just processes it and goes into intuitive mode, and I kind of get things very quickly. I'm like, what the fuck? All one night, 30. I said, oh, that's organized. That's just in my brain, right? That's organized. That's a gang, like maybe even a cartel. So I'm talking to this guy, and he says, and he brought it up, not me. He brought it up, and he said, "Oh yeah, this cartel run out of San Antonio. They all came in here one night." And he said, "I know exactly what happened." This is a guy that he's got a little shop. It's not a huge shop to work on cars, but he's got a little shop, and he walks around. He's got I think he's got like a Glock on his hip, right? Open carry guy, and he's Mexican. He knows what's going on, right? And he's not a minority in that community. So again, I just kind of want to set the stage here that it's not just quote unquote white people who have an issue with what's happening on the border in Texas. There are millions of Mexican Americans that have an issue with what's happening at the border. Now, let's also be clear about migration during the 80s, 90s, and even 2000s. The majority of those people that were trying to get here were either Mexican or Salvadorian, things weren't too great in El Salvador. Maybe a little Guatemalan, but mostly Mexican and El Salvadorian. That's changed. The makeup of people coming through the border, and I know that most of you know what that looks like. It's not the same. It's not even close. We're actually getting less people from Mexico coming across the border than ever before. What we're getting is people from Venezuela, and not just anybody from Venezuela. Maduro emptied out the prisons. So it's kind of like what happened with Castro in Cuba. He just emptied out the prisons and put them all on boats and sent them to the United States. They did the same thing with Haiti, right? Whenever they want to just, whenever these countries want to dump people that are, I wouldn't even say a threat to their society or their hegemony or their rule. No, these are just bad people. And they just want to get rid of them. They don't have to take care of them. They don't want to have to feed them, right? Oh, let's send them to the United States. And how to move here? What is this? Sorry. Let's see. Yeah, okay. My son is having a crisis. Hold on. Hold on one second. Okay. A lot of communication here. A lot of communication. Anyway, just through the grapevine, I have heard that what's coming from Venezuela is worse than MS-13. That's what we're getting. That's just from Venezuela. Okay. That is just from Venezuela. That's not to mention whatever we're getting from the Middle East. And there are good people that are in the Middle East. They're good people on this realm, okay? They're good. So I'm not saying that everybody from the Middle East is an armed terrorist, right? But we don't know what goes on over there. We have hardly any idea about arrangements, agreements, training, double agents. We have no fucking clue. We have no clue about the radical element that just can't wait to get back at America because of what the United States has done in places like Iraq and Libya and Afghanistan and Yemen for years, Iraq for years, Somalia for years. These are people who would relish absolutely getting revenge for the death and the blood of their family, their friends, right? They don't forget it. And now all of a sudden, there's a big opportunity for that to happen. These are just might be independent agents. Not to say that there are actual organized networks that have been trained and by who knows who, right? It's been established that ISIS was a creation, just like Al Qaeda was a creation, just like the Taliban was a creation. Yeah, that's right. We created or we helped the Taliban. We trained the Taliban, albeit to fight the Russians, but nonetheless, we trained them. Al Qaeda, ISIS, those are all organizations that have our fingerprints on them, as well as other governments in that area, right? We did that. So why would it stop there? And these are groups that we know about. And they're just coming across the border, right? What about the Chinese? They've got video of just nothing but, fighting age Chinese males coming into this country. And this has been going on for a long time. Right? I mean, I started to see some of the border stuff. I went to a Tea Party meeting, maybe 2 years ago now. And this guy was who was down on the border. He's one of these groups, and very anonymous. Like nobody could have their cell phones out, and videotape the guy because he needed to be. He didn't want to be threatened, right? I mean, there's a lot of threat here, and he showed us videos of people coming across the border, night cam stuff. One time there were about 12 Chinese women being ferreted across the border by one of their coyotes. What the fuck is going on there? I mean, do you think that these are just Chinese women that are tired of what's going on in China? Maybe. I don't know. Nobody can give us a straight answer. So because we've learned not to trust the government, and why would you? Anybody that would do that at this point is, either on heavy duty SSRIs, or you're in complete denial. Why would anybody trust the government at this point? Because we're not getting any profiles or any breakdowns. There's no vetting whatsoever of any of this. Like this, we are reaching a crisis point, clearly. Now, this is all just the kindling, right? This is the kindling, and they putting gas to kindling, and we're so close to them lighting that match, and this thing just setting on fire. And I'm not here to be hyperbolic. I live here, right? And I'm not one of these guys who's going to be John Rambo, right? Like if I have to defend, my mother or whatever, of course, that's a given, right? That is a given. But fighting in a civil war was not necessarily, on my card for 2024. Although we could see it coming, right? We could see it coming. The eclipse we had in October, that's an interesting eclipse because it's in Libra. And what is Libra all about? It's about agreements. Libra rules law and agreements, contracts. Contracts are being violated right and left here. Right and left. So here we go. The next eclipse, April, Aries, war, action, military, police. Aries is the god of war. And that eclipse is coming right up from Mexico, right up through Sinaloa, which is where one of the big cartels is, right up from there, right through here, and then cuts right, goes up to the northeastern part of the country. And we're not even there yet. We are not even there. We are not even at eclipse velocity. Like we don't get there until March, like the end of March, and we start to feel it. Come on. So, man, like talking about speeding up the timetable a bit here. This is I'm not here to like, get you to feel, scared or paranoid. I'm not here to preach fear, but I am here to tell you that we are very close to having this thing go completely sideways. Much more closer than we understand. Who's going to back down? Who is going to back down? You think Mayorkas and the quote unquote globalists are going to back down? No, they never back down. They never back down. They just, deny or reroute or, double down. That's the strategy. And if Greg Abbott had proved himself earlier as a responsible steward of the people, I might have more faith in this process, but he hasn't. Look, I know a lot of you follow 15 Minutes of Flame, and I've talked about this before. But when Greg Abbott was governor, he's been governor ever since I've been here. So I don't know any other governor besides Greg Abbott. And I've been here since 2012. But when Greg Abbott was governor during the COVID crisis, initially, he responded like a conservative Republican governor would. Although he did declare a state of emergency, and by declaring that state of emergency, he had power over every single county in Texas. And I'm not certain that he ever withdrew that state of emergency. It's still, for all I know. I'd have to check, but I never saw anything formal, right? So he still is in charge of every single in the state of Texas. Okay. And it was mostly okay until I believe it was August of 2020. And that's when Mike Pence came to Texas. And he met with Greg Abbott, and he met with a pastor, one of these super mega church dudes. And then after Mike Pence left, everything changed. Abbott turned up the volume, shut down more of the private access for people, like restaurants, et cetera. I mean, it was not good. It was not good. And then we had a city rebellion in the state of Texas, where the city attorney for San Antonio found a loophole in Abbott's mandate where it didn't say anything about a city not being able to decide what their COVID policy was. So we did that. It was like all of a sudden, it's like, yeah, we're going to make it. We're going to triple down here in San Antonio, and we're going to mandate everything. What did Abbott do? He just applauded him. He's like, well, you figured it out. Good for you. Like it's some fucking game, right? Instead of pushing back and saying, look, I'm the fucking governor here, and you're not going to do that, right? It was just weird. Then all of a sudden, these other cities look at San Antonio and they're following suit, and they're making things even harder for people. And let's not forget that Greg Abbott pushed the vaccine hard. Why did he push the vaccine? Because Greg Abbott is a graduate of Vanderbilt. That's where he got his law degree. And Vanderbilt was one of the universities that was part of the Moderna team for the Moderna vax. Gee, I wonder why. I wonder why. It's just a coincidence. So you look at his track record here, and it was horrible. And I'll tell you something else. When the COVID stuff was happening, Greg Abbott would not meet with any Republican lawmaker. Now, it was during a time where, if I'm here in Texas, we have session every other year, right? So one year, like everybody is taking money from their lobbies, their donors, right? They're taking all that shit, they're planning and planning and planning. And then the next year, when the Capitol opens, we have session, they all go run in to get these bills passed or to defeat the bills, right? It's a yearly ritual that happens here. Now, I can't remember if they were in session or not in 2020, but he would not meet with any Republican lawmaker during that time. And I was in contact with Kyle Biederman, who was the representative for Fredericksburg during that phase. And I talked with Kyle on a semi-frequent basis. And again, I used to go in and patronize his hardware store because, they didn't make you wear masks, or they didn't give you the stink eye or the sideways glance when you walked in. And they didn't even make there was a brief period of time, maybe for about a week, that their employees kind of bent a little bit, but then they bent back, and then they weren't doing it either, right? So, I would go in there and I'd patronize the business. It's like, yeah, man, appreciate what you're doing. Now, there are people that have very different opinions about Kyle, and who he is connected with. That's a different story, and that's not what this show is about. But he was telling me personally that Abbott wasn't meeting with any Republican lawmaker. Then I had heard that there was, and again, this is from Kyle, not from me, that Abbott was charging people. Like, if you wanted to meet with Abbott, you had to pay to meet with Abbott. Like, okay, so this is the backstory of Greg. He was not available for any Republican or conservative, quote unquote, lawmaker in Texas during that time. He just shut it down. So how are the people going to have any access to the quote unquote governor? None whatsoever. So when you look at something like that, people will tell you who they are by their actions. It's not that hard. Every now and then you'll run across somebody who will have a kind of a Saul Paul moment, if that even happened. Just a reference point. Every now and then somebody will have a come to Jesus moment, and they can change, and they can turn their back on, their upbringing, their past, or their programming. It can happen, and thank God it can happen. But for the most part, people will tell you who they are by what they do. If you hang out with them consistently enough, you'll see it. You'll see it. So what are we supposed to take from Greg Abbott and his actions prior to all this? Greg Abbott, who had 2 years to do what he's doing now. 2 years. Think of all the people that came through that border in 2 years. And it's just that border. We haven't even talked about Arizona, maybe parts of New Mexico, clearly California. Arizona and Texas are the big areas where these people are coming through. So now all of a sudden, he's going to get tough. I just question that. I question it. If he had been on the case earlier, we wouldn't fucking be here. He'd stopped the bleeding earlier. So what did he do instead? He shipped them off to places like New York or New Jersey, wherever, right? He shipped them off. How is that not human trafficking? We all think of human trafficking as being really covert and shady and dark. It's human trafficking. He's moving people around. And I've seen people who apply this stupid fucking logic. Well, if he hadn't done that, people in New York and Chicago wouldn't be waking up. Maybe there's some truth to that. Possibly. At the end of the day, they didn't even have to be here. Right? They didn't even have to be here. So if you're somebody in New York and you're dealing with the children in your school being moved out of your school because now all of a sudden the migrants got to go live in the fucking school, how do you feel about this? And I'm not even talking about Eric Adams. I'm talking about just an average general person who understands the migration route and who's aiding and abetting this. If I was somebody in New York, I'd be fucking pissed at Greg Abbott. It's like, why the fuck are you doing this? Now it's our problem? Same with Chicago. Chicago's getting a shit ton of... So on the one hand, there is some degree of outrage, right? And maybe people need to be outraged. Maybe people need to be shaken out of their slumber. But I wouldn't be happy about it. I'd be fucking pissed. It's like, keep them in your state or stop it. Just stop it. Pump the brakes on it already. Now, to be clear, again, we're on Abbott. I'm just going to stay on Abbott for a bit. Abbott has been a young global leader with the World Economic Forum. On the record. Okay? On the record. Like many of his politically aspirant colleagues, Abbott has spent some time, made some trips, put on the tiny hat, been to the wall. Okay? In fact, his dedication and devotion to that place manifested itself when we had the hurricane in Houston, right? The one that wiped everything out. I think it was 2017, 2016. And what was it? Rockport, Texas took the brunt of this hurricane. And people were applying for state funds because the state was willing to reimburse people like this emergency fund and all this stuff, right? But in order to qualify for the funds, the person had to essentially sign a pledge to not boycott or divest from Israel. And I was like, why are you tying the state's aid to that kind of condition? I mean, that was just a total mind blower, right? Like, when did that become a prerequisite to receive aid from the state? A state, by the way, which if you're paying property tax, and property taxes are high here because there's no state tax, that theoretically that fund was set up for you. And now all of a sudden there's a qualifier that you have to pledge allegiance to a foreign government. That was on Abbott's watch. So I'm trying to give you a sense here that not everything is what it seems. Now all of a sudden, he's going to be the guy leading the charge when everything he's done prior to this moment in time has shown that he is not that guy. He's not that guy. For all intents and purposes, he's a globalist. And he's allowed this wave to come through this border unabated. Another example of Abbott, I'm not going to play the video, but it's out there if you want to find it. There was a guy that Abbott was running for governor last election, and there was a guy who questioned Abbott about Klaus Schwab in the World Economic Forum. And he asked him right there on video to denounce Klaus Schwab in the World Economic Forum. Abbott wouldn't do it. He got into this word salad. He went to the word salad bar. Well, we don't like globalism. We're not for globalism here. But he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't call Klaus Schwab out. Again, actions. You will know people by their actions, not by their words, by their actions and their deeds. So just bring all that forward, right? Bring it all forward. And now we're supposed to trust this man. Now we're supposed to get on board with whatever it is, they've got planned here. Now, there is some chatter out there that they're going to try to use this as another J6 moment. And again, people need to wise up, sniff the coffee, right? Wake up, because it'd be real easy to bring in, a group of agents provocateurs and kick this shit off, right? And now all of a sudden, we got a new J6 moment. And then where do we go from there? I mean, let's just kind of play this out. And I got stuff I'm going to play you. There are things I am going to play you. But where do we go from there? Let's say this thing gets hot. And by the way, 25 states have all chimed in with Texas. That's half of the union. That's a split right down the middle, right? Half the union is on board with Texas. Kristi Noem is supposedly coming to the border. Like, we are fucking, manning up and womaning up right now, because this thing is really starting to look like it's going to go hot. And, we are staring down the plan. This is all planned, by the way. This is not spontaneous. This is not all of a sudden the spirit of Americans are, we've had enough, right? And we're taking back our country. The conditions were created, and this is all planned. You go back to 2016 when Donald Trump was elected. When he came in, eventually, what did he do? He had to deal with COVID. And what happened with COVID? He passed an executive order that essentially balkanized the country, right? Balkanized the country. It made sense at the time. People were like, Trump said, well, California is going to deal with COVID very differently than North Dakota. Fair enough, true enough. And then it was up to the states to be able to run their own program, right? Trump kind of got out of that one. But I don't think that was, I could be wrong. If somebody's out there who wants to correct me, that's fine. I don't know. Maybe Biden rescinded that executive order. But once we did that, we were unhooked. And even if it was for a temporary period of time, what happened? Well, we had the summer of Floyd. And all that happened. And again, because of that, the feds couldn't come in. Now, people will say, well, the feds can't come in anyway. That's bullshit. That's total bullshit. I believe it's the 14th Amendment, if I'm not mistaken, when John F. Kennedy sent troops or deputized the troops, which is what Joe Biden is theoretically about to do now, into where? Into Arkansas, right? Or Alabama. It was University of Alabama. My bad. Different school. Alabama. Why? So that those students, black students, could cross the line and go to a college that they had not been able to attend. So there's precedent here. And I don't know, he can't do that. He just can't send. No, you can. if it is proven that a person's civil rights are being violated, that can happen. And that's what Kennedy did. And how were our civil rights not violated in 2020 when they're burning fucking cities down? Our civil rights were being violated. Didn't send anybody in, did he? So all this has all been created. It's all been created. Everything that you're watching and witnessing and all the events that are going to unfold here are a byproduct of social engineering and creating strife and division amongst the people of this country. And trust me, I'm as frustrated and angry as many of you are. And because I've seen what's happened. You've seen what's happened. We've seen what's happened. Oh, shit. Frozen here. You can probably still hear me. I'll just try to this happens once every live stream. I just get these weird moments where the screen freezes. It's unnerving. You know, I did a live stream in Austin. What was it? Last week? This didn't happen. Only happens on my ISP. I'm as frustrated and angry as many of you are. And if you're frustrated and angry, it's with good reason. Yes, there we go. I was waiting for the unfrozen moment part. My producer told me. Here we go. Almost back now. Almost back. You got a black screen. That's kind of interesting. I'm as frustrated and angry as many of you. And a lot of times when I do live streams, I do everything in my power to give you something else to think about, give you something else to look at, give you essentially a release valve. But I do my very best and have made an effort to be as balanced and consistent and patient with what's going on in the world as possible. Because you don't need somebody else getting you completely riled up. Right? There's enough of that out there. I'm not necessarily here to fan the flames in that way. What I've chosen to do with my contribution is to keep you informed, to point things out, and to unhook you from as much programming as possible so that you can make better choices, discern what's happening, and not just be led astray by some Judas fucking goat that wants to take advantage of your passion and how you feel about things. And there are plenty of them out there. And I've made it my personal responsibility to not do that because it's dangerous. It's really dangerous. I know limits of what I want to influence other people with. Right? But it doesn't mean that I don't share your frustration and your anger about what has taken place here. You all have a right to be frustrated and angry. Every single one of you. How we deal with that, that's our own personal and individual journey and choice. I'm just going to do a refresh here. Let me try this. All right, we're back. Okay. So we're at a really pivotal moment. And I just want you all to just stop and take note of what's happening and try not to get swept up in the inflamed rhetoric. Okay? Do your best to not get swept up in it, because these are people that are very skilled and adept at moving people around and getting them to do things that might be well-meaning, but could be used against them at any point in time. Just go look at January 6th. There were a bunch of people who went there and were doing their best to protest, which they should, by the way. And it's their right, by the way, to do that. And then what happened, right? It was a trap. Set them up. They set them up. So everything they're witnessing is not above and beyond that model. I'm just saying. Okay. So that's all the disclaimer. That's the caveat. That is the caveat. Now, there comes a time when, the cooler head stuff and the discernment, there comes a time where that may not make much of a difference. And that at that point in time, wherever you are, you may be living, I don't know, you may be living in Hawaii, and this may not have anything to do with you, right? Or you may be living in Vermont, and this may not have anything to do with you. But if you're living here, or you're living in an adjacent area, it has everything to do with you. When that moment comes, and that time comes, then you're going to have to use your best judgment in order to deal with the situation at hand, whatever that is. The problem here, too, just going to throw this out there, is that you're not always going to know who the good guy is. Keep that in mind. You want to throw a little spanner in the works, as they say. You won't even know who the good guys are. You may see guys that may look like the good guys, and they are not the good guys. Hey, come follow me. Trust me, we're in completely uncharted territory. Completely uncharted territory. All right, I just wanted to kind of get that out there because I like to set the stage for, we set the stage, and now we can talk about the details. All right, we can talk about the details. So let me do this. Here we go. So let me show you how real this thing is getting. This is from, let me see if I can just grab this. Hold on. Do a screenshot here. This is from the state and the government of Texas. They just posted this. Some of you may be familiar with it. This is how real this is getting. Hold on. Okay. Texas military now actively recruiting members to join the border mission, Operation Lone Star. Operation Lone Star integrates TMD with the Texas Department of Public Safety to deploy border security assets to high threat areas to deny criminal organizations the ability to illegally move drugs and people into Texas. The Texas Military Department has new full-time positions available for the Operation Lone Star border support mission. These positions offer an array of benefits, including lodging and per diem of $55 per day. That's happening right now. State of Texas is manning up. Now, Biden, again, this is all kind of up to the minute stuff. Biden has threatened to federalize the Texas National Guard. They can't do it. They can't do it because there's certain language that is in the Texas state constitution that precludes the federal government from doing that. Now, what will happen is that the federal government could easily come in and start to try to do that. And if you're a Texas State Trooper or Texas State National Guard, you're either going to be informed at a higher level to resist and say no because of the language, the existing language in the Texas State Constitution, or you'll say, sure, okay, federal government, I'm on your side. I'll lay down my arms. So that's what's happening on the Biden side of things. They're gonna do that, right? So what they're doing is now they're forcing a confrontation. They're forcing a confrontation, and a confrontation that's right there between the guy that's supposed to be working for we the people in the state of Texas who pay their whatever their salary, right? Their benefits. That is really the litmus, and that's where I think that's where it comes into the language of the Texas State Constitution, because we're paying for them. The federal government is not paying for them, so it'll come down to it. Well, what are you going to do? Right? It's right there. It's right there. Street level intimidation. And then what happens? What happens if they just say no? Nope, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. Then what does the federal government do? And this is just between the state of Texas and the federal government. Remember all the other players that are in this and have been here. Where do they fit in all this? Right? We're talking about variables that we're all trying to comprehend and crunch. Agent provocateurs, false flaggers, all this shit, right? It's all like in the air right now. So it is not going to be a black and white state versus the federal government. It's not, on one level it is, but on another level, it's not. Like, this is part of an agenda. When Steve Pieczenik was on Alex Jones, one of the things that Steve Pieczenik said was that, number one, he had no use for the Constitution. Well, there are people who are legal scholars in America who might agree with Steve Pieczenik, right? Might agree with him. Steve Pieczenik's goal was to, at the same time, centralize and decentralize. What does that mean? It meant that the decentralization part of Steve Pieczenik's plan, whoever Steve Pieczenik is working with, that the decentralization part was the balkanization, right? So there wouldn't be one centralized group of states, right? That would be decentralized. But the centralization would rest in the power of one individual. And at that time, the individual was Trump. Now, I don't know if Steve Pieczenik swings both ways. You know, he's an intel guy, probably does. But that was the goal, right? That was the goal, and he even he even congratulated Alex Jones on helping him with the goal. He says, because without you, we wouldn't have been able to do it. That he was targeted early on. Why? Because Alex inflames the masses. Alex helped him with the decentralization part. Anyway, I'm going to show you a video here. And this goes to show you how deep this thing is and how covert the state of Texas, the city of San Antonio, the non-governmental organizations, and the quote-unquote globalists are in cahoots with one another. So let me get this video queued up for you guys. And I've got some other videos here for you too. Okay, let me just do this. Copy. Let me get in my other browser. That's not the browser I want. All right, here we go. Okay, let me just preface this by stating that I don't know who Tenet Media is. When I clicked on their website, I saw a bunch of faces, including Tim Pool, which is not a face I want to see. But the video, I think, speaks for itself. So I'm going to play this video. And this is at a integration center in San Antonio. And this guy, I don't know who the reporter is, but he's blowing the lid on what's happening in San Antonio and how there's this collusion, right, at a city level. If you're Greg Abbott and you are the governor of Texas, and you have Ken Paxton or Dan Patrick, your job is to be aware of what is happening in your individual fucking cities, in your state, okay? I mean, you were when COVID was around, but why are you not paying attention here? Let me play this for you.
You got to give me a trespass warning
right now. That's your warning.
So, guys, I am currently at the Migrant Center in San Antonio, Texas, where NGOs are facilitating human smuggling of migrants into America. If you look right here, you actually have a San Antonio Police Department car watching as a lookout, basically guarding this area. They're taking side contracts in relations to these NGOs actually being paid a significant amount to guard this area. And I'll walk down here.
Okay, listen to what he's saying. This is a San Antonio police car. And he's saying that the San Antonio police are taking side gigs for the NGO to provide security and help process what's coming up from the border. So watch this.
Just to show you this even more, they're in their official San Antonio PD uniforms to top it off with their San Antonio PD cards as well. Just to give you a little background real quick. Are you guys on duty right now?
This is an extra job for us.
So are you being contracted by the NGOs then? Why did you tell them just to say no? So you guys are being contracted by the NGOs?
None of your business. No comment.
It's none of my business. You're San Antonio police, but you're being contracted and paid by NGOs. You're being paid time and a half?
No comment.
No comment? But you did confirm you're not on duty. This is a side job for you. So you are being paid by the NGOs. Do you think that's a conflict of interest at all?
Back up. What I tell you.
So you got San Antonio PD here
Back up.
being paid by the NGOs
Back up.
to essentially facilitate the human trafficking of illegal migrants into the country.
Outside the gate.
Can I ask you guys a question? These NGOs claim they're not paying for migrants' flights, but the migrants are saying the exact opposite. How this facility in specific works is if the migrants are held here for a certain amount of time without actually being released, then they claim that they can't pay. Ma'am, can I talk to you? Yeah, she doesn't want to hear it because she already knows. So why are you not investigating this for human smuggling? Because they're paying for these migrants' flights into cities, into America. Because you're the police. So this is something that you should be investigating. They're lying about paying for migrants' flights when in reality, they absolutely are paying for migrants' flights and sometimes even booking and then charging the federal government back. So they're
So
scamming.
this is a really interesting image here. Well, this guy is calling out these two slugs. This guy's got his head down. Like you can just see the shame here. It looks like he's a sergeant. Those are 3 stripes. And what is this guy? He's probably what, lieutenant sergeant, or he's 1 stripe below this guy. 3 stripes as a sergeant. So these guys aren't even just, rabble. They're not just, regular squad car guys. That's a fucking sergeant right there. But look at him. He's got his head down, and you can tell that I think that there's some degree of shame here. This guy's got no shame. Now, he's going to pop up later and clearly go on the offensive. But I think this guy's kind of struggling with his spirit a little bit here. He's pacing around, and he's trying not to hear what this guy says. But he knows he's wrong. All right, let's just keep going.
People. But why are you guys as police officers not looking into this? And instead you're taking money from these NGOs and these affiliated organizations.
Hanging his head in shame. That's a sergeant.
No comment.
No comment? Again? As police officers, you don't think that you in your official uniform is a conflict of interest at all?
No comment.
And you got a lookout over here providing security as well?
No comment.
Why do you guys have San Antonio PD cars here while you're in your uniforms guarding a migrant facility that is engaging in human smuggling?
No comment.
No comment? So you have these 2 gentlemen up front helping human smugglers as they're on the police force in their official capacity, but taking money on a side gig. That's what he said earlier. So they're being paid by these NGOs, allowing human smuggling to happen when they should be investigating what is human smuggling into America. No comment on that either?
Nope.
No comment on anything tonight, huh? Do you think what you're doing is moral?
No comment.
No comment? You probably don't care it's moral because it pays good, right?
No comment.
No comment? What about you, sir? You haven't said much other than telling him not to talk to me tonight. Do you think this is appropriate what you're doing? Can I get your guys' badge numbers?
Yeah.
What's your badge number?
2213.
2213. What about you, sir?
81.
But you said this is a side job, so who's paying you?
You didn't know that.
Why don't I need to know that?
You don't.
Why are you in San Antonio Police Department uniforms if you're off the clock with your San Antonio PD cars here?
I don't need to answer that question.
You don't need to answer it?
No.
Why won't you answer it?
I don't need to.
You don't think it's a conflict of interest?
Who are you that-
I'm a reporter. I'm asking you.
I don't care who you are.
You don't care who I am?
I don't care who you are.
So you are being paid by the NGOs.
I don't care who you are.
So you have San Antonio
What I
PD
can
here.
tell you is you need to get outside the gate.
San Antonio PD here being so you're not going to answer a question for me, but you're going to attempt to arrest me.
I didn't try to get you off the property. You're outside the gate. You can stand out there and record all you want to. Off the
So
property.
why are you in public uniforms? You guys are public officials. You work for you basically get paid by taxpayer dollars, but you're here off the clock being paid by NGOs that are facilitating human trafficking, correct? It's kind of weird how you're dodging this. It's a simple yes or no question.
I need to answer your question.
So you are.
I answer your question.
You're kind of answering my question by not answering my question. And considering I know you're already being paid by the NGOs, it seems even more suspicious that you're not willing to admit to it. Quite literally helping facilitate human smuggling
Outside the gate.
into America.
That's the gate right here. Outside. Huh? Is it a worker? Call them. Come out. Wait across the street.
So they're running security, making sure everyone has wristbands before they come in here. Insane.
I said outside the gate.
2213. Can I see your badge, sir?
No, I already told you what it was.
Will you show me your badge?
No.
Because I'm not really inclined to believe you with all the shady activity going on here.
That's your problem.
How much are you getting paid to be here?
What I just tell you? Outside the gate.
Is it time and a half? You can get the official
Outside the
owners
gate.
to trespass me if you'd like.
Outside the gate.
You got to give me a warning.
No,
You got to give
I'm
me a
giving
trespass
you a warning right now. That's your warning.
All right. So, what San Antonio? What's your name? Mikhail Wayne. What a name. So, facilitating human smuggling of migrants into America. He's mad that I'm standing past this little line right here, but he's quite literally helping human smugglers facilitate.
All right, what's fascinating about this video? First of all, you got Foghorn Leghorn here, who in a lot of ways, like this guy is a symbol of what makes America shitty. You know, he's nothing but an order follower. And he's getting time and a half to do something on the people's dime, right? Well, I guess that the NGOs are paying him. So I guess the upside is that theoretically the people of San Antonio aren't paying him. Well, why show up in a San Antonio PD uniform and a San Antonio PD police car? Why not? Here's another question for this processing center. Why not hire a fucking security company? That's what they do. But instead, they're contracting out to the San Antonio PD. This is insane. And of course, if the tables were turned and they were asking the questions of the guy with the camera in a traffic stop, what do you think they would do? If you just said, I don't have to answer that question, I don't have to answer that question, no comment, no comment, no comment. In most cases, that person, unless you know exactly what to say, am I being detained? Or am I under the suspicion of committing a criminal arrest? I'm under investigation. Like, you have to ask those qualifying questions. And eventually you can get to, am I free to go? 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 And eventually you can get through it. Now, every now and then you'll run into one of these guys who will put the handcuffs on you, and they'll do that. And you'll ask the questions later. Right? So there's no guarantee that even if you go down a certain path, that you can kind of get out. Most times you can, a lot of, and there are times you can't. In most cases, guys like that would be in full court press mode and getting ready to either tase you or put the cuffs on you. In this case, that's not happening here because our friend is just a regular reporter who's asking some very basic and fundamental questions. And these guys fucking take the fifth. This is what's fundamentally wrong. It's the system that's promoted everything that we've gotten to this place. And these guys, they're way downstream from it, but they're part of the problem. They're a big part of the problem. I don't know what this guy's scene is. Maybe he's got alimony, child support. Maybe he's got to, maintain a lifestyle, for his new girlfriend or whatever. And so he just says, "Fuck it, I'm taking this." And by the way, what do we got here? We got a sergeant, and we've got what, like a lieutenant sergeant or whatever below a sergeant is. These guys are fucking skimming off the top. They're not even giving, their patrolmen or their beat guys the opportunity to do it. They're doing it. They're skimming off the top. These just aren't regular San Antonio PD guys, especially the black guy. He's a fucking sergeant. Those are the guys that dispatch orders. That's the guy that people report to. He's not going to let anybody downstream get these good NGO dollars. But this is part of the problem. This is why America, and a lot of times we want to point the fingers at politicians, and they deserve to have all the enmity and anger and rage that they deserve if they're in the wrong. And then you get these guys. They're part of the problem. So now, how are these guys going to fare if we are in a hot war? Like, would you trust this guy? Would you trust this guy to defend you, to be on your side? Fuck no. He's, again, you'll know him by their actions. He's already telling you what side he's on. He will do everything in his power to enforce the rule of law by whomever is making the law, or some pretend law or some pretend mandate. And do you think he and his sergeant buddy are the only ones? No. So let's bring it back to Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick and Ken Paxton. This is happening in their state. You think that they're unaware of this? This is just one city. You got El Paso. You got Houston. Now, clearly San Antonio is pretty close to the border. But why aren't they doing anything here? Why doesn't the mayor of San Antonio, who claims he's a fucking libertarian, in Austin, sitting face to face with Paxton and Greg Abbott because of this? It's not happening. So when you see this, it's like, how serious are these guys? Right? Like, really, how serious are they when it comes to, cracking down? I think it's great that finally there's pushback on the Fed side. But I also want you to take all of this into account, to try to understand how much of this has been socially engineered, how much of this has been planned out and played out, and when the time comes, are we going to be able to trust the people who theoretically have our best interests at heart, if up until this time they have demonstrated time and time again that they have not and didn't? And I don't know. I know my answer to that question. Emphatically, that's no. So where does that put us? That puts us in a pretty precarious position. Now all of a sudden we're supposed to just jump right in with these guys who helped create the condition that we're going to have to deal with. Not enough people are asking these questions. What I get in the media, or what I get from a lot of streams and YouTubers and people on Twitter is like, fuck yeah, rah, rah, let's go, let's get it done. Do they understand the nature of this? They don't fully understand the nature of all of this. Because if this thing gets kinetic, and it happens here in Texas, guess what will happen here in the rest of the United States? Biden administration will declare martial law. That's what they'll do. And they will shut down everything. You go and look at the FEMA. When you go into FEMA and you look at what FEMA can do under a state of martial law, they have control of everything. They have control of the media. They have control of shipping. They have control of interstate commerce. They have control of banking. They have control over resources. They can reallocate resources. If you personally have resources that FEMA needs, they can allocate. They can grab them. That's the power of FEMA. People don't understand that. So if we are headed into a hot war, it's kinetic, and it feels like it's kind of headed in that direction, and you get a lot of internet patriots that just can't wait to get in on the action, right? Even if you're not in Texas, you will feel it. You'll feel it. And oh, by the way, we're in an election year, aren't we? And oh, by the way, a guy with orange hair is trouncing everybody on the way to possibly being reelected as president again, or selected, or whatever you want to use. And we understand that there's a uniparty, right? We understand that. But at the same time, you also have to understand that within that, there are factions who will duke it out, and they'll want to establish their turf versus somebody else's turf. So if they want to continue to establish their turf, they being Mayorkas, Biden, Obama, the neoliberals, that's what we'll call them, the neoliberals, then they will do everything in their power to not have an election, including splitting the country in two and having fucking martial law. It's another scenario here. That's another possible scenario. Sorry, we're going to cancel the election. It's too dangerous for people to go out and vote. This is where we are drifting into territory that is historical, and to the point where it changes everything forever. We are that close. Now, if it does happen, right, not a whole lot we can do about it at that point. It's the way it is. And there's a process involved, and maybe this is going to be part of some kind of process that ultimately cleanses everything. It's possible. And at the end of the day, when the smoke clears and the human and social wreckage is swept away, maybe we'll have a better chance for a better day, and somehow the system has had a fucking enema. And maybe that's what this is all about, ultimately. But that's a big, big risk, right? That's like putting everything on black or red. That this ultimately leads us to a national exorcism of sorts. And it could. We could be in John Teeter territory here, right? But the what's at stake is enormous. It's truly enormous. And if we go down this path, get ready for your life to change. Your changes could be subtle or they could be dramatic. And, you know, we're in this really crazy Pluto and Aquarius time where, you know, what is Aquarius, right? Aquarius is revolutionary. It's totally revolutionary. So here we go. Revolutionary energy. You know, for those of you who follow some of my stuff on Twitter and Sunday Night Astro Live, you know, the one thing that I've been talking about astrologically with these outer planets is that, and again, this is kind of out in the distance, but, you know, feels like the future is encroaching upon us. That when Neptune moves into Aries at the end of 2025, so we're not that far away, Neptune will be in Aries, Pluto will be in Aquarius, and Uranus will be in Gemini. And all three of those outer planets were around either during the Revolutionary War, Pluto in Aquarius, Uranus in Gemini, or the Civil War with Neptune and Aries. So three outer planets that were in play during two of the most intense conflagrations that this country was a part of. That's the astrological story that's being told. So perhaps this is inevitable, that it's in the stars. And perhaps the social engineering and the order followers and Greg Abbott, you know, being a young global leader with the World Economic Forum and everybody looking the other way, perhaps this is all part of it. And then it all just has to play out. Maybe that's the way it is. But I guarantee you, if it does, it's not going to be anything like these, you know, these keyboard patriots think it'll be. And we haven't even talked about China, right? China's just waiting for this shit to happen. And, you know, how they can bend the curve, right? Now, I will say this. If you look at what's going on in the United States, this theoretical government, right? We're involved in a war in Ukraine. It have been. We're still sending money, armaments, all that's going to Ukraine. We're in a war with, for all intents and purposes, the Houthis, Yemen, right? So now we're in another war. We're back in Israel. That's another war. So those are three conflicts that this country is currently involved in. And then we got a fourth one brewing at home. So add that all in. That's just to the country, right? Tell me a country in history that's fought 4 wars on 4 different fronts and been able to win those wars and still maintain its hegemony or its dynastic power. Doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. At the end of the day, the goal here is to blow this thing up, this thing being this country. And they will do it by any means necessary. Any means necessary, including a civil war, including bankruptcy, including the rest of the world fucking hating us because we've been doing our best to spread democracy for the last 20 years, right? 24 years. They'll do anything. That's the goal. That is the goal. And what we're seeing now is part of the process of that goal, to destroy this country from within. And again, at the end of the day, maybe this is just what needs to happen. And when we get to 2028, 2029, after the smoke clears, right, we look around and say, fuck, that was intense. But maybe now we have a chance. Maybe that's what it's all about. But I guarantee you, the cost, the human cost to get there, maybe that's just the way it is. what is it? The tree of liberty has to be watered by the blood of sacrifice. Isn't that the saying? And perhaps that's the way it's going to go. But just make sure that if it goes down like that and you're a part of it, or we're a part of it, that you're conscious about everything that's a part of it. Do not be swept up by rhetoric. Do not be swept up by Greg Abbott rolling in and all of a sudden being a great American hero. He has not demonstrated that to this point. Do not be swept up by keyboard patriots who are inflaming the situation. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be frustrated. That's part of our experience. I think we can all share that. And maybe at some point in time, it's just going to have to break. If that time comes, it is the way it is. And God bless us. And may the truthful and the righteous and the I hate to use the word God-fearing, but may the truthful and the righteous carry the day, if that's the case. And that's the best we can hope for. And be sure you're on the side of being truthful and righteous, not self-righteous, but righteous. And somebody asked me on Twitter, well, what do we do? What do we do? How do we deal with this? Well, my suggestion is that number one, your thoughts and your actions are coherent. And I'm a firm believer in this, that your thoughts and your actions will predicate your destiny. So if your thoughts and actions are aligned with the highest intentionality possible, right? And it's really easy for us to descend into, hate, right? Really easy for us to go into that place. And hate is different than anger. I didn't use anger. Anger is okay. But it's really easy for us to go there. Hate blinds us. But if you make your choices on a daily basis, your interactions with other people, right? And your ability to be fair, your ability to be loving, your ability to be discerning, your ability to be sovereign, to be able to say yes, equally say no when you need to, right? Your ability to be kind and compassionate when the situation calls for it. If you can do all those things on a daily basis, there's a very good chance that you'll be in the right place at the right time. That's how it goes. If you're a complete asshole and you're a complete dick and your motivations and your game is based on some form of subversion or some form of denigration, I guarantee you will not be in the right place. You won't be. So you literally have to live like God is watching. You have to live that way. Because really, truly, that's how this goes down, right? That's how it goes down. So everything is an outgrowth of your actions, your intention, your mindset, what you say, and how you say it. That's where your path will lead you. That is where your path will lead you. The other part of this is that you have to listen. You have to listen to your intuition and your still small voice. You have to cultivate that. And you can't do that when you're listening to everybody else's inflamed rhetoric. So you have to take time out every day to just stop and pause and to get in touch with that voice. Okay? I'm not telling you to do anything that is outside of your realm of being able to process. Those are two fundamental things. The third thing, very functional, you need to be prepped. You need to make sure you got at least 3 months of food and water and anything else on hand. Foundational fundamental, doesn't matter. Natural disaster, civil fucking war, just have it, right? And after that, know your neighbors. And what else can you do? What else can you do? I'm assuming that most of you aren't part of some sort of I don't know, legion or posse or militia, right? If you are, I'm sure you got a plan. I'm assuming most of you aren't. That's just setting the ground. And one of the things that I do believe is that when the time comes, people will, if you're in that space, if you're in that mind space, and you have consistently done this, when the time comes, you will know how to act. You will know how to act. And nobody really understands who they are until they're asked to kind of dig down deep inside themselves. And that's when we find out who we are. So, look, I'm all on the side of getting this shit sorted out and, hitting the pause button. It doesn't look like it's going that way. Doesn't look like it's going that way. Just be careful out there. Just be careful. Don't allow yourself to get swept up in this rising tide that may not even be yours. Okay, that's all. That's kind of how I want to end it. Kind of how I want to end it. I could play you stuff from Dan Patrick. I could play stuff from Ken Paxton. Right, they're telling you what's going on here. They're making a stand. But again, who are they, and what's their intention and what's their goals? All right. Let's see what you guys have. Let's see. Privacy anti-scum. My small voice says loudly, keep your head down. Probably a good thing for me, maybe not for you. What else do we have here? Rabbit Underground. Solar panels for lights and phone charging if still signal internet. There you go. Let's see. Prep like this starts tomorrow and train like they hate you. That's another side of this. You do have. I've gone back to the gym, and I was there today. Yeah, that's another side of it. You got to stay in shape, and I agree with Escalation with this totally. I'm with you on that, Escalation. Gov doesn't allow anything. There are puppets from the puppet masters taking orders. Yeah, well, I think we understand that, right? We understand. We get that. They certainly don't represent us. I love it. Nora Rashid. I'm hearing the 1812 overture in my head. Right? You guys are warriors. I love it. I love it. What does Thor have to say? Again, if this government would allow this setup, then they would surrender for the greater good. Depends what the greater good is. That's always part of the interesting journey here is the definition of the greater good or words in general. Let's see. Particular bloodlines infiltrated our own. Yes, I'm sure some of them, but don't. Policies about central banking, bankers control power. So JF, I don't know if you're new here, but thank you for your comment. And most people here are pretty hip to the game. And that's true. Let's see. What is Lily Lou saying here? What do I see Trump's role being? That's a good question. Well, I could see Trump being president of the new United States. Probably wouldn't be the old United States. And then I don't know what that looks like. Right? I mean, we could toss it around. So there are prophecies, which I haven't brought up, but there are prophecies that at some point the United States will look very different. The United States, the head of governance for the United States will not be Washington, D.C. And there are two places that have shown up in quote unquote prophecy pretty consistently. One is Denver, Colorado, and the other is Omaha, Nebraska. And in those scenarios, there's more than one president because the United States is chopped up into regions. So there's a president for every region and everything is different. So I could see Trump facilitating the beginning of that process. That I'm just going off of intuition and this kind of prophetic model that has come out in various sort of prophecies, right? But that he might be, Trump wouldn't just want to be one president, though, amongst many. He'd be probably the lead president amongst, it'd be a completely different system that we have now. And I could see him ushering in something like that. All right, who else do we have? Thanks, Oswald. I know you've been listening for a while. Appreciate that. What else do we have? JF coming in. JF's coming in hot now. Now the grubs just lazy your ass. Paradise, California, Lahaina, and Arkansas and Kentucky. Look those up. Yeah, JF, baby. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call you baby. JF, we've been talking about this for a long time. So if you're new to the stream, right, we've been talking about this for a couple of years now, but it's true. It's always good to have a reminder, right? It is always good to have a reminder. So thank you for the reminder. Sandra Jack Shaw, been feeling these hyped energy so heavily. I'm into health and fitness like never before in my life. You need to be. Period. End of story. Look at this. Fran, 2 Zumba classes in. Right, Fran? You go. We're in it together. Yep, it's time to get healthy. Eliminate as much over-processed foods as possible. Got that right. Got that right. Common welfare clause ruined the Constitution. Pretty bad. Pretty bad. Let's see, anybody else here? Look at Steve. I'm fit to be tied. We need a new flag. No doubt that'll happen. Orlando brings up the New Madrid fault line, which I've talked about. And to keep an eye on that, because the eclipse runs right alongside of it. And that plays a part in some of these prophetic visions like Edgar Casey, Gordon Michael Scallion. I think there's others right? Where literally there's like almost an ocean where the Mississippi River used to be. It almost cuts the country right in two. And that is along the New Madrid fault line, which coincidentally the eclipse is following. Shit's here. Here we go. What prophecy of this? Gordon Michael Scallion and Edgar Casey. Very similar. Shit's going down. Always be ready. Eyes open. Don't drop your guard. I agree with that. Head on a swivel. That is all part of it. You got to see, that's another part too, right? You have to have situational awareness. Now we're getting into some tactical kinds of conversation. You got to have situational awareness. I mean, in any part of your life, you have got to have situational awareness. Don't fall asleep for 1 minute. It's not Washington now. Well, there's some truth to that, Hanging. That's true. That is very true. Let's see. It's Harlot versus the Beast. The excuse of the greater good, which is an illusion. Totally agree, Steve. Let's see. What else do we have here? Toboggans equals bad news. The U.S. is Rome. That's interesting, Bree. I think that there's some truth to that. But I don't think it's ruled by the Romans. Maybe a little sprinkle of black nobility. I think Rome was leveraged. I think Rome became debt holders. And the people holding the debt are ran Rome. The immediate transits following the Fourier eclipse allude to. So Heather, I'd have to go to the chart, go to the ephemeris, and look that up. I mean, I've just been focusing mostly on the eclipse. But if I'm not mistaken, it is Mars in Aries after the eclipse. And because Mars will conjunct Saturn in Pisces when the eclipse occurs. So the progression of Mars as it conjuncts the sun, as it conjuncts the true node, and as it conjuncts Chiron in Aries, I think is very significant. Again, what is Mars? Mars is action. Mars is war, right? Mars, Aries, God of war. So, you look at that transit, things get hotter after the eclipse. That's what I think. And look, people are pissed off and they're strident, right? And they have a right. You have every single right to be pissed off, strident, and angry. Totally get it. Totally get it. Do not lose your head. Stay focused. I'm ready to be a rebel in Colorado. Wolverines. What a shame this once great country is headed down this path. It's a really interesting comment. I think the country was great, has been great in spite of itself. I think the people have made this country great. Not always the policymakers, not always the people that have planned our intervention in any number of foreign wars. Not the people that lifted trade sanctions against China and made them the most favored nation trading status. Not the politicians who decided to, out of the goodness or kindness of their heart, theoretically, create a system that would what's the word I'm looking for? Disempower a certain group of people so that they were always going to be, from that point forward, beholden to the government and the people that would make sure that their mandates would be locked and loaded, and that their welfare payments and their WIC cards or whatever would be fully amortized, every month or every 3 months, right? Those are the people that fuck this country up. In spite of all of them, I believe that the spirit of this country and the people that make this country up, and this country is special in that way, that's real. That's real. And there are plenty of stories about people who've made sacrifices, not in some fucking war, but sacrifices in their life for other people. That has made this country great. And I think that spirit will ultimately carry us through. That's what I believe. It's my belief. Right? It's my belief. Let's see. Well, Trump is a builder after all. Maybe he'll build something new. Good point. Good point. BB comes back with, the only problem is he doesn't pay the contractors. Oh, you guys are great. You guys are great. Let's see, anything else? Or the Patriot Act eviscerated it. It really did. I mean, the Patriot Act really got into the First Amendment. It was all the listening. You know what's interesting about the Patriot Act? Because I revisited it. In the Patriot Act, they carved out a portion for Muslims in the Patriot Act to essentially be protected. I thought that was really interesting. It's if you go back in and read the Patriot Act, there's like 2 sections in there that basically say that, you can't spread hate amongst the Muslims or the Islam. It's fucking weird, right? It's like, oh yeah, we're just going to piggyback on supposedly all these events that were supposedly done by these people, and we're going to use this to be as invasive as possible into Americans' activities. But please don't blame the Muslims. That's in the fucking Patriot Act. Crazy. Now, I didn't know this. This is good. This is oh, right. F. Scott Fitzgerald's cousin designed the flag. Great Gatsby. Speaking of prophecy, interesting. Let's see what else we have here. Gone squatching. Lake Michigan will empty into the Gulf of Mexico, prophesied by Casey. That's right. Yep. Gordon Michael Scallion is the other guy who has done that. Okay. CR user said, I had a dream about the border situation 2 years ago. Sometimes dreams come true. My boy Jeff, I've been following Robert's advice since the October eclipse to get to the gym. I've been climbing 111 stories on the stair stepper for 9/11, working mentally, society waking up to what happened. I like that. Jeff putting his soul or his souls into action. Good job. Maceo Gabbard. I could see Kanye being president of Region 5. That totally fits, right? That totally fits. Poor Kanye. Although, let's see. You guys are great. Great comments here today. Absolutely great comments. Okay. So here we go. Please hit the like button That always helps the algorithm. Subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications. And if you want to buy me a cup of coffee, there's a link there in the show notes. You can buy me a cup of coffee if you want. And that's about it. I think that's all I have to add. I will not be streaming live on Sunday night. Unfortunately, I will be partaking in an unhealthy ritual called watching a football game. And the San Francisco 49ers are playing the Detroit Lions. So I was going to say something, but I'm going to hold off. I want to leave you with something funny. Okay? I want to leave you with something funny. I want to bring a little humor. And a humor where it's like, guess what? There was a time in this country when we didn't give a shit about certain things. Like, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a big deal. Some of you remember that time. I'm gonna play you a video that is hilarious. So I got to kind of front load the video a little bit. Bob Uecker. Today's Bob Uecker's birthday. Bob Uecker turns 90 years old today. And if you don't know who Bob Uecker is, he's an American that has made our story great. Bob Uecker was a less than average player in Major League Baseball. I think he only hit like 4 home runs over the course of his career. Played catcher. He won a World Series ring. But Bob Uecker has gone on to become an icon of somebody who just does not take himself seriously. And as a result, he was a regular guest on Johnny Carson and hilarious. Johnny loved having him on because he was hilarious. And Uecker would always make fun of his career. And eventually he made it to the Baseball Hall of Fame, not as a player, but as an announcer, because he was an announcer for the Milwaukee Brewers for years and still is to this day. He only does home games now. And he's, what else about Bob Uecker? He had a TV series for 6 years called Mr. Belvedere, spokesperson for Miller Lite, hilarious guy. And he's a massive Aquarian. He's got like 5 planets in Aquarius. So I'm going to play you a video. This was Bob Uecker on Johnny Carson. And he played a practical joke with Bob Gibson. Now, if you know anything about Bob Gibson was one of the most feared pitchers in baseball. In Bob Gibson's prime, when you went up against him, you were up against a force of nature and somebody who did not care if he put a fastball up near your ear. That was Bob Gibson. And when Steve Carlton pitched for the Cardinals, same team as Bob Gibson, he said on game day, nobody ever talked to Bob Gibson. Nobody ever looked him in the eye. That's how serious Bob Gibson was. So I'm just setting the Bob Gibson sort of tone for you. And I got to play this video because it's fucking hilarious. So this is Bob Uecker on Johnny Carson. And it speaks to a time where people didn't take things so fucking seriously. And they had fun. And they cracked jokes. And guess what? Sometimes those jokes cross color lines. So I'm going to leave you with this. This is funny as hell. Remember Bob Gibson, remember Bob Uecker, okay? I'm going to play this more than once, just so you get. This is Bob Uecker, looking very 70s there, Bob. Johnny Carson. I'm wondering, this might be Carson in New York City, actually. I think it is. Carson had a different backdrop in California. So he had yet to make the move to California. So I'm thinking this is around, what, maybe 69? Here we go.
This is obviously you only get a shot of it as
This is
obviously a team.
this is a
photograph.
team picture that once a year they have these team picture days is what they are. And on this particular day, this cost Bob Gibson, one of the great pitchers in baseball, it cost him and I a couple $100. They had taken the picture and they had proofed it and everything, and then brought it back to the ballpark before they finally caught that seam there.
What? I can't. Can you come a little closer on that?
Well, Bob and I are holding hands.
We're gonna get a close shot of that. You certainly are, aren't you? This is
One more time.
obviously you only get a shot of it as
This is
obviously a team.
this is a
photograph.
team picture that once a year they have these team picture days is what they are. And on this particular day, this cost Bob Gibson, one of the great pitchers in baseball, it cost him and I a couple
Look at
$100.
Gibson. He's a smile. He
They'd
never
taken the
smiled.
picture and they had proofed it and everything, and then brought it back to the ballpark before they finally caught that seam there.
What? I can't. Can you come a little closer on that?
Well, Bob and I are holding hands.
We're gonna get a close shot of that. You certainly are, aren't you?
That is fucking hilarious. It was a different time, but that's what made America great in its own way. All right. Thanks for being here. I'll catch you guys on Monday night, Serious Sports. In the meantime, use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible. Keep your head on a swivel and just use your discernment. Please, 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 please. Bye for now.